Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about episode 5 of HBO's limited series Laetitia. You know, last week I said that episode 4 was fairly uneventful, kind of like hammering home points that we already knew. And it's almost like the creators heard me and were like, well, you don't know what you're in for episode 5, because they hit us with all sorts of information, some pretty high tension and drama. This was probably the strongest episode of the series so far, just off the strength of the tension, the information, the I guess the I don't know. I found this episode to be very troubling, very harrowing at times. So much good stuff going on. So let me just get right into it. First thing I want to talk about is, I said we learned a lot. What did I tell you guys from like probably episode 1, if not episode 2 at the very latest? What did I say? I said that fucking foster dad is a piece of shit. I don't like him. There's something up with this guy, and sure enough, we find out that the foster dad is a fucking rapist, and he and a fucking scary ass creep. Like, we saw the aftermath of the scene where in episode 1 where Laetitia comes home and she's like late, and I don't think we know it's him at the time, but he comes into the room and asks where she's been. We see the continuation of that scene, and he's like overbearing, like looming over her. And I'm going to talk about this in a moment. He looms over a lot in this episode, casting quite a big scary shadow, but he looms over her and is very threatening, very intimidating. And she goes to her room and cries and freaks out, slams her jacket down, all this stuff. We also find out one, that he tried to molest their friend Lola, who I don't remember this. So if you're one of the few people who watches these videos, maybe you can remind me in the comments. But there was some point where we find out that Laetitia contacted Lola or was with Lola like the day before she died or something like that. I just remember thinking, like, who is Lola? But now we see that Lola is a friend that her foster dad tried to molest, and Laetitia observed this from her bedroom window. Well, she observed the aftermath. She didn't observe the actual attack. She just observed her, Lola leaving. And we find out the foster dad also is molesting Jessica, which, like I said, I think it was episode 2. There's a moment where she's like laying her head on him or something, and he goes to like caress her cheek, and she moves his hand away. And I'm like, there's something about this guy and his overbearing nature, his strict nature, the way he comes down on them so hard. We've noticed that he clearly favors Jessica over Laetitia. So like, seeing that all kind of get confirmed for me was pretty vindicating. No one said I was wrong about it, but I felt vindicated nonetheless. But we see him. There's 2 instances. So we see him coming into her room and just saying like, don't make a fuss or something like that. And we don't see anything happening, but I mean, it's pretty clear, since after the Lola scene, we know what kind of life he's living. This isn't surprising. And then later, the one that's really telling, and I wonder if we're going to see a continuation of this scene in the finale, but Laetitia and Jessica are sitting on the couch watching TV, and he comes up behind them and he like places his hand. And I love this shot too, because this was a great scene, because there's nothing that is said like in the literal sense, but there is so much said with body language, facial expressions, etc. So he comes up behind the couch. We don't see him at all. I mean, it's obviously him, but we don't see him, like his face. We just see him kind of like almost like a shadow come into the room, stands behind the couch, puts his hands on the back of the couch, doesn't say a word, just puts his hands there, and then they look at him, and then he walks off, and then Jessica gets up to follow. And that's a scary scene because, one, like I said, they do a lot with no dialogue at all. But then furthermore, that lets us know that this is a routine. Like, Jessica knows what it is. Like, he came out there, he didn't say shit, and Jessica was like, all right, I guess it's time for me to go. So I wonder, when I say a continuation of that scene, I wonder if Laetitia is going to get up and follow and observe this happening. Like, whatever it is that they're happening, if she's going to see it happening. I sincerely hope not, but I suspect that might be what happens. I thought it was going to happen at the end of the episode. But we learned so much about this piece of shit. He's scary, he's overbearing, and he's a molester, rapist. So, and then think too about Laetitia, right? I said from day one, what has happened with her that would put her in a position, somebody who is looked at as being wholesome and being pure, what would put her in a position where she's like doing drugs, drinking, fucking, all the kind of stuff she's doing leading up to her death, if this is the perception of her. I'm like, there's got to be more going on, and I want to see what makes this person, what makes somebody who is considered by all accounts to be very wholesome, what makes this person arrive at this destination of the events that happened with Tony on that night. And now I think we have a clearer picture of that. Every man who's been in her life has been a piece of shit. Her father, who we see briefly in this episode, her birth father, we see briefly in this episode being a fucking terrifying weirdo driving around on top of a parking garage. Like, why would you think this is a good time? But I'm sick of that fucking guy too. He's a piece of shit. Her foster father's a piece of shit. You got Tony, who's a piece of shit. Like, she has no positive male influences in her life whatsoever. And now she's out here doing things that she probably wouldn't be doing otherwise, because she has been treated so poorly by every man that has come along in her life. So, we got a clear picture of that. We also find out, I think, her the note from episode 1 that said, look around you, I'm not the only one who's lying. Like, now we know. Okay, so we know that she's lying. She lied about to that counselor lady about what the foster dad was doing. We know that Jessica is also lying about the foster dad as well. And then we also know the foster dad himself is lying when he tries to portray himself as someone who is good for these kids. So, like, she's dealing with what she's dealing with and possibly being looked at as someone who, like, okay, you should be more honest with what's going on. But nobody's being honest with what's going on. No, like, Jessica's not being honest either. They're like using almost like their twin powers to cooperate with each other and not being honest about what's happening. And to what end? And that's a discussion in and of itself as well. Like, how do you arrive at a place where, you have twin sisters who have been through what they've been through. You have Jessica dealing with the father, and they both decide to almost cover for him. And Jessica still currently, during this investigation, is still refusing to cooperate, at least for the most part. Also in this episode, though, Jessica out of nowhere just kind of does start to become cooperative. Like, she's talking to this cop guy and telling this information. I'm like, where's this coming from? So I don't really know why Jessica all of a sudden decided to cooperate, but that happened. So what else did I wanted to talk about? We learn in more detail about what happened on the night of her death. We miss out on the final act of it, and I was curious if we were going to find out in this episode. Tony made it sound like an accident that he then kind of like had to cover up, and that's not the vibe that I'm getting. I haven't gotten that vibe from Tony this entire time. All of this seemed very purposeful, but we see some of the events leading up to her death, including the rape that she, we found out via third party, text messages that were sent saying, I got raped and whatnot. I forget even who she sent it to. William was his name. I can't recall, but we see this, and this was, it's tough to kind of like quantify rape scenes. Like, it's like, okay, this is the worst one, but this was probably one of the worst ones. I mean, you see ones that are very graphic where, like, you might see like a woman being held down or hit or struck, or you might see pronounced thrusting, but the nature, and I'm not even going to describe it on this video, but the nature of what happened between them, just it felt so, I guess it's because she's so young and she looks so young, and then it's so, there's not a time where rape isn't forceful, but like, I don't know, it's tough to describe why it's so troubling without describing the scene, but I found that to be an incredibly troubling scene, and that I'm kind of surprised that they filmed it in that manner, because it got very graphic without really showing anything. It got very graphic, and that that was tough to watch. But we find out what happened with her there. We hear her say something to the effect of, "I'm going to tell everybody what happened," and then that's what prompts Tony to kind of turn around and chase after her. And we don't see what happens after that, but I think we're going to find out in episode 6 that he probably didn't accidentally hit her. He probably hit her on purpose. Let's see, what else? I think I've actually covered most of the things that I wanted to cover. The rape scene, the scene where she comes home late and the foster father is super scary and looming over her. The look around you, I'm not the only one lying. Talked about that. Talked about Lola. Talked about the foster dad and Jessica. So yeah, I kind of have covered everything. So I'm going to cover a couple of just random notes and thoughts that I had and wrap this one up, and then we'll see each other for the finale next week. I really like the scene where I believe it's the opening scene actually, where Jessica's talking to the cop and she's explaining what it's like to lose a twin. And I thought it's not one statement, it's like a whole story, but I thought this was a very profound and moving statement. Like the idea of like, I'm only living half a life now, when it's my birthday, it's not my birthday, it's our birthday, and now I can't quite celebrate it the same because she's not here. Like that does have to feel like more of a loss of part of you than non-twin siblings. So like that I thought that was a very interesting way to describe what that may feel like. I don't have a twin, so I would never know what that feels like, but I would imagine it would be something like what she described. And I thought that was a very well written scene. And again, the actor who plays Tony is fucking incredible. Like, obviously Tony is a repulsive character, but this performance from this guy is terrifying. Like, this guy is harrowing. Like, I don't know. It's hard for me to believe he's even acting. He's that good at being scary. We have, how he gets, like, when he starts drinking and shit, and like he takes Laetitia back to his house. He's drinking, he's doing coke, and you know something bad's gonna happen. And like I said, the scene is very graphic, but just watching him dance is scary. Like, this guy is completely off his shit, and you just want her to get the fuck out of there. And you know she's not gonna. She's not gonna try. This is where the rape happens, and you're sitting there like, man, he all he's doing is dancing, and it's fucking terrifying. He's so great at being completely unhinged. This guy, I mean, he's not gonna get the credit that he should get for his performance on this show. I don't think anybody's watching it. I don't know if people are gonna be checking for this come Emmys next year or anything like that, or Golden Globes, but man, this guy's doing an incredible job, and I wish more eyes were on this just to see how great of a job this guy is doing at playing a completely unhinged psychopath. It's terrifying. So my hat's off to him. So wrapping up, great episode. I thought this was the best episode of the series. We learn a lot. There's a lot of tough stuff to watch, a lot of tough information to take in, but we have a more well-rounded picture of what happened to Laetitia that night, what built up to that, and now all that's left is to find out what happens in the finale. I don't know what else there is to divulge. I mean, ultimately, what happens to her after the chase down, and then I think maybe Jessica bringing to light some things about the foster father. And again, this, keeping in mind, they didn't do it in this episode, I don't believe we saw any real life footage, but keeping in mind that all of this actually happened is so sad to think about what happened to these two girls. And I hope that this has a thing at the end where it kind of gives an update on what's going on with Jessica today, what's going on with the foster father today. Hopefully he's either executed or doing life in prison. But what's happened to Tony today. Like, I like when they have real life shows and they update on what's happening with those people. I'm really curious to see that, especially with Jessica and the foster father, because I can't imagine what those two have been through. And I really hope that Jessica is at least living a happy life with like a husband who treats her well, and that foster father is either dead or never getting out of jail. That's my hope. So I'll see you guys next week for episode 6, the finale. Till then, peace.